Welcome into SportsZone All Access here on this Tuesday, February the 17th already. We are just cruising through this month, I swear. Before we blink, it's going to be April. And the reason I say that's because February is the shortest month of the year. We know that. But as Ian and I always allude to, you get into next week, we have girls playoff basketball and state wrestling. And then it's NSIC boys playoff basketball, Summit League, girls state, boys state. And next thing you know, it's the end of March and you blinked. All the way, then March Madness starts, right? And you're watching that, and like literally, the next thing you know, it's April. So get ready, Ian. We have 4 more days, then busy time, April, all in about a 10-minute period.
Sounds about right. Yep.
Sounds about right. Well, we had such a busy weekend. We were recapping what we saw on the weekend, yesterday's show. We still got a couple of good stories that we went down to USD on Friday. Ian did. We brought you live the press conference for the new head coach, Matt Vitzthum. Well, while Ian was down there, he had a conversation with both Matt Vitzthum and John Schemmel, Ian, about the NDSU news, which we continue to talk about because, we do have to talk to SDSU, which Jordan DeSmit did, and then you talk to USD because it does really affect those teams.
Very much so. And we saw this about 20 years ago when everyone made the jump up from Division II to the FCS. Now NDSU, the first one to go to the FBS, going to the Mountain West, drastically changing the landscape in the Missouri Valley, in the FCS nationally. So it's interesting to get the two schools' perspectives of how they see this going forward, both in the short term and the long term.
Well, and one thing, the FCS, how long does it stay in its current format? We don't know. But what we do know is that John Schemmel thinks that they'll be going up at some point. Here's what he had to say from Ian's story on Friday.
North Dakota State is the 7th program to make the jump to the FBS over the last handful of years. But it's the Bison's 10 national championships over the last decade and a half that set them up for this move.
Kudos to them first. This didn't happen overnight like it always feels like it does. They've been building for this for 10 years, 20 years.
The Bison made the jump from Division II to the FCS in the mid-2000s, a couple of seasons before the Coyotes transition.
You think back through the history of all of this, we've been here before. I hate losing a rival. I hate losing an elite competitor in FCS.
South Dakota lost to NDSU last season, and new head coach Matt Vitzthum is disappointed he won't get the chance to face the Bison.
I remember the feeling of walking out of the Fargo Dome this fall. I wanted another opportunity to go compete against them as the competitor, and I know there's a lot of our guys in the locker room that wanted that. They've made their decision. Can't speak upon that, but all I know is that the Missouri Valley is still, the greatest, most competitive football conference in the country.
The NDSU move opens the door at the top of the FCS and paves the way for other programs to make the jump as well.
Our goal is to prepare to be an elite FCS program, and I believe and we believe in doing that, we'll be prepared for whatever happens in the future. I tend to think it's inevitable we're all in FBS at some point, all the Dakotas.
Well, there you go. That's a very interesting soundbite. A couple of things I took away from that one was obviously the last soundbite. All in the FBS, all the Dakotas at some point. That's kind of the interesting point that athletic director John Schemmel said there, Ian. That really kind of makes you go, okay, this is what you want your AD to say, but some of them don't, right? Some of them just say we like where we're at or where, you want them to say we want to be in the FBS.
Yeah, it was really interesting when I did sit down with him and he said that line. I knew that was the money quote right there, for lack of a better term. And I wanted to put that right off the top in the story, but you have to build up in the story.
Sure.
And so I said, okay, that's kind of the ending point of, okay, here's the NDSU move. Here's how the Coyotes have shaked up against them the last couple of years. And they see that the Bison, are going to be the trendsetters of going Missouri Valley to the FBS. Of course, it speaks to just the state of college athletics now with so much movement across all different conferences. We see it on the basketball side, but especially on the football side as well. So the Bison seeing an opportunity there to go to a new look Mountain West. Could this open the door? If they have success, I think it could be very easy to see South Dakota State, South Dakota, North Dakota, a lot of other teams make the jump up.
Definitely possible. You know, another thing I took away was, you know, John Schemmel's disappointed, right? Like he didn't want a good team and a rival and a team that always is at the top of the league. He doesn't want them to leave. And it's funny because there's a lot of NDSU fans out there and even some other people that are saying, hey, you know, like we're leaving now, you guys can win. And it's like, well, that's not what these teams want. You know,
Right.
SDSU does not want the Dakota marker to go away. They love the game, whether they win it or lose it. They love that game. They love that rivalry. USD is saying the same thing. They don't want them to go away. You know, they don't want you to say, oh, you know, we're leaving. You know, you can have the FCS now. They want NDSU to stay for that competition-wise. So that's a little bit of something that'll look different. We're going to certainly see how it looks different as probably USD and SDSU, excuse me, will not play NDSU this year. So that'll immediately look a lot different. Well, we also, while we were down there, it was Matt Vitzthum introductory press conference day. Had a chance to sit down with the new head man about what he thinks everything will look like. Here's an introduction to how that transition went from a previous coach to now. Travis Johansson was named the head coach for USD on January 17th, 2025. His contract was worth $300,000, but now he'll be the Rutgers defensive coordinator, where he signed a 3-year, $4.3 million contract.
He's a big name in the coaching circles, and for good reason. He's an elite football coach. And so, you know, I probably wasn't naive to think that Travis was going to be a 5 to 10 year guy.
Matt Vitzthum was hired less than 13 months after the Johansson hire to be the new head coach.
It's been a whirlwind, but I've said how fast it happened and how swift it happened. It honestly was nice. Didn't overthink anything, didn't have the time to.
Vitzthum was high on athletic director John Schemmel's list, making the hiring process seem quick.
Well, the main thing is just his leadership, and he's such a relationship-driven person in everything that he does, and it's not disingenuous. It's real. It's who he is.
The excitement around Vitzthum's hiring rang most loud from the players.
More than hearing, you know, you're the next head coach at the University of South Dakota, it's hearing that roar, it's hearing that passion in the team room, because that's where I've been. That's where I've had my boots on the ground.
Vitzthum will now get to work in preparation of his first season as head coach, with hard work and dedication at the forefront of his plan.
This program is built on some core fundamentals, and that's with tough, hardworking, competitive people. And that's what we have in that locker room. That's what we're going to continue to base this program on.
And so there we go. Matt Vitzthum introduced you to him, got the beginning of his ideas. He's not going to tell us the X's and O's, right? But, you know, he was involved in the offense last year. So I would think not a ton different, you know, but Travis Johansson, big defensive, big like to run the football, control the possession. No Aiden Bauman now, right? No Travis Johansson anymore. Now you have an offensive-minded coach in there. That might change a few things, and I'm excited to see how that looks for Matt Vitzthum. He really seemed like Schemmel and that university and that team specifically is very high on him.
Yeah, it was interesting hearing them talk about when the team found out that it would be Vitzthum taking over, and just the reaction that they said that the team had. They knew that they made the right hire when they said that. And it is an interesting dynamic going from a defensive-minded coach now to an offensive-minded coach.
Right.
Vitzthum was the wide receivers coach 2 years ago and then the quarterbacks coach last year. You think they're going to throw the ball a little bit given those two backgrounds for him?
You'd think.
We'll see.
I mean, he's really climbed the ladder. I mean, wide receivers coach to co-offensive coordinator / quarterback coach to now head coach. That's about as quick as you can work up from a position coach all the way up here. That means one of two things. One, they just like him. He's a nice guy. Or two, and it could mean both, I guess, he's a really good coach, right? You know, we've seen that in the NFL and in college ranks. If you're a good coach, they recognize that talent. So best of luck to him. Well, we're going to continue with our stories. Look back at the Class A state gymnastics meet where Esteline Hendricks continued their dynasty. They're up to 4 straight state championships. We'll talk with the Red Hawks when we come back to SportsZone All Access. Welcome back to SportsZone All Access. As we mentioned, the high school state gymnastics meet was held this past weekend, and it was a really good weekend if you were a Harrisburg Tiger or an Esteline Hendrick Red Hawk. Harrisburg Tigers won both the state team meet on Friday, and then won the individual one with Caitlin Mason, who was fantastic. And then you had Maggie Hausman from Esteline Hendricks that won the individual on Saturday. She was also part of the team that won the state championship on Friday. That's 4 straight for the Redhawks, who have built a dynasty, to say the least, even with a super young team. Here's the story we had with the Redhawks. Esteline Hendricks entered Friday's team competition as the 3-time defending state champs. That placed a target on their back, but the team was able to fight through the pressure.
Our team just was rallying behind each other and having a good time, and we were doing our things and hitting our routines, and that's all we could ask for.
The Redhawks claimed a 4th straight title, edging out Parkston, Ethan, Hanson, Mount Vernon by less than 3 points.
Very relieved, very happy. Very proud of our team. We had a lot of injuries, and it was really hard to have everybody just forget about that and work as hard as we can. But we did.
Feeling so excited. We did a lot of hard work, and it's just so relieving to get here.
Sherry Johnson is in her 8th year as the Esteline Hendricks head coach. She says all seasons are special, but this one will stand out.
Just the adversity that we went through, and then just to call on some kids that had to step up, and just it was a whole team effort to get there. So it just gave me chills, and we actually got tears in our eyes.
The Redhawks have 20 athletes on their roster, 15 of which are freshmen or younger. But that's one of Coach Johnson's favorite parts of the sport.
That's one great thing that I love about coaching gymnastics is you get them in 7th grade and you get to keep them till 12th. So you really, you're a family, and they're like your own daughters.
Yeah, and they certainly have performed like a group that is very close together. And that's something, this is one of those sports people say, oh, it's an individual thing, everyone's out there on their own. But, really it isn't. It's about a team supporting and working together. And, one thing when you watch these highlights and listen to them, you hear every time someone going crazy when they land something. That's your teammates, right? And that's, what's more supportive than, you land something or you land it pretty good but not perfect, and they're just telling you to keep going. It really is a team sport. And you can tell that this team has rallied around that idea. And, they have a little pressure that they put on themselves. They rose to that challenge, though.
Yeah, that they did. 4th straight championship. And we keep talking about how young they are, with so many players on their roster being freshmen or younger, middle schoolers, and yet they're performing on this big stage in front of the whole state and excelling at it. So the future certainly bright for Esteline Hendricks.
It is. 15 of their 20 athletes on the roster are freshmen or younger, as we mentioned in the package. Yeah, that's impressive, right? And so keep an eye out, for a couple of these too. Maggie Hausman, a state champion at 9th grade. We better watch out for her. We got to keep a close eye on her. She could be doing some special things in her career. Well, we got a big KELOLAND Sports Game of the Week. It's kind of a special week. We have 2 of them in one week. Lincoln and Roosevelt, 1 versus 2 in boys basketball at 7 o'clock tonight. We'll preview that matchup when we come back to Sports Zone All Access. Welcome back to Sports Zone All Access. Kind of a fun week. We have 2 KELOLAND Sports Games of the Week. Had a good one in Del Rapids last night between Del Rapids and Sioux Valley girls. And now we get a chance to call another one here 2 days in a row as Lincoln and Roosevelt get set to go tonight. And this is one that we picked about a month ago and said, okay, this should be a good basketball game between 2 really good teams anytime. Obviously, you can hope that they're still number 1 versus 2, and it is.
Yeah, it is. When we had this one picked out, it was, okay, let's hope the rankings hold. Let's hope the rankings hold. And then both of them kept winning all up until their last game. Roosevelt taking that loss to Watertown. But the Rough Riders still number two, in the rankings, just behind Lincoln. We'll talk about Roosevelt first. Feels kind of weird talking about number 2 before number 1. But here we are. We're talking about the Rough Riders. And they've kind of come out of nowhere this year. I expected them to be decent. I expected them to be in the mix to be a state tournament team, but they've exceeded expectations.
Yeah, they've been good. They've been consistent. You know, it's hard to say, of what it's all been. It's really been a balanced team, a balanced roster. That's scoring a lot of points, 68.7 points per game. That's second best in the entire class. And so, that's something to think about, Ian, with what we've seen is that they can score the basketball. And so that's something to think about when you look at that is Lincoln, 72 points a game. They're the best. Can you score with Lincoln is the question. And honestly, could you try to slow down Lincoln a little bit? Those are the tough things. These two have already played this year. And that one was not a pretty game. Back at the President's Bowl, December 29th, that was the game that Sam DeGroat was just on fire to start the game, and they won by 19. So we'll see. This is a big challenge for Roosevelt, but I have, like you said, they've surprised us a little bit, but I've liked what I've seen from the Rough Riders so far. Just 2 losses so far through the season.
And they've been balanced this year. You mentioned Sam DeGroat talking about Lincoln there. They have the 2 or 3-headed monster leading the pack. For this Roosevelt team, they don't have a 1 or 2 or 3. It's a bunch of really good players that play really well together. That's how they've been able to have their success. There's no one player that's going to jump out on the stat sheet and say, wow, look at what he's doing. It's just that they play so well together. Yeah,
and as we said, they're trying to get back into the win column. They just lost to a good Watertown team, and Watertown is a team, that record-wise had been looking good and then had a couple losses, got blown out by Lincoln, got beat by Washington, and we're like, oh, well, maybe they're not that good. And then Watertown, they've turned it up, 92 against Jefferson, and then the 3-point win against Roosevelt. So, we like what I've seen from the Arrows as well. But we want to talk about liking what you see. We all like what we've seen from Lincoln. Unless you're not a Lincoln fan, I guess then you've maybe been a little frustrated because this team can play some basketball. 72 points per game this season, only allowing 50 points per game. So they're towards the top in both of those. Offense, number 1 at 72 points per game. Defense, number 2, only behind Spearfish in that situation, and only one of 2 teams allowing less than 50 points per game. So this Patriots team, Ian, they are no joke. You mentioned the 3-headed monster. They got some talent on this team, led by one of the best players in the state, Sam DeGroat.
Yeah, he's so electric, can step out, has the size down low as well. Just a matchup problem at every level of the court. You see they're throwing down a thunderous dunk. That was one of my favorite highlights that we had all year.
Yeah, we were on the call for that. That was finishing a 34-point night that we saw in a good game against Washington.
Right, yeah. We've had this Lincoln team a couple of times in the game of the week, and they're deserving of it. The number 1 team reached the semifinals last year, and they're better this year. They have just continued to excel and improve this season. They've had a couple of close games. It hasn't been all 20, 30-point blowouts. They had a really tight one with T-Area a couple of weeks ago, so they're battle-tested as well. And it should be a good one. 1 versus 2. Who can't get excited about that?
And this Lincoln team, they're playing in Class AA. This is where some of the biggest athletes are. This is where some of the best athletes are. It's certainly where the most number of athletes are, right? When you talk about just the school size that they have to choose from. But there's also some really good coaches at this level. So to be here in the middle, past the middle of February, and be 16-0 at this point is not easy, and you said they've had some close games, but they've found a way to win them all. And that's the impressive part. We've seen them play some really good games. The one we called a few weeks ago where they played Washington, and Washington certainly played one of their best games of the season that night and just about upset them. So, it'll be interesting tonight to see how this goes, but this is the second time these 2 teams have met. Does that influence anything that Mitchell Begeman does as the head coach for Roosevelt? Because they did lose by 19 last time. So there is an adjustment that kind of has to come with that. And that'll be interesting to see. How do you adjust against a team that can shoot it and score like they do?
Yeah, I'm hoping for a lot of points tonight. 1 and 2 in the state offensively. Expect them to get up and down and run the floor. But that also speaks to how good this Lincoln defense is. You mentioned, Grant, a few minutes ago about how they're number 2 in the state defensively. When they get up and down the court so much, playing such a fast-paced game the way they normally do, to still be able to hold opponents to that low of a scoring defense, that speaks to just how good they are on that side of the ball.
Well, yeah, because, they're pushing the tempo, and so then you got to get back, because usually some of those tempo teams will give up some extra baskets. They don't do that very often. They know how to play some good defense, and they have a two-headed monsters, the Sams, you can call them, right? Sam Erickson, Sam DeGroat, both going to Augustana. The Vikings getting a couple of really good ones there, and we know how well they're playing right now. So, yeah, here we go. Lincoln versus Roosevelt coming up tonight, 7 o'clock. There's a lot of places you can watch it with Kelsey Dennehy and I on the call, and it's 1 versus 2, and it is hard to believe. It is our last regular season live game of the year.
Wild.
All playoffs from here on out.
Wild. Absolutely wild. I believe, 9 days until our next broadcast? Next Thursday will be our next live game?
Yeah, and that's in the girls' region playoffs. So, and then the next week, then we have boys' region playoffs, and then we have some SODEX 16 the week after. So, yeah, keeping busy. Well, we're going to wrap up today's show by telling you what you can expect tonight when we come back to SportsZone All Access. Welcome back to SportsZone All Access. Here's what's coming up tonight on KELOLAND Sports. Got a lot of highlights. If you can't tell from the graphic, Roosevelt at Lincoln Game of the Week coming up here at 7 o'clock. Don't forget you can watch that on KELOLAND Plus and on Kelo Extra TV. Harrisburg at O'Gorman Girls, Yankton at Sioux Falls Christian Girls, Area at Brandon Valley Boys, and Mitchell at Washington Boys. If that was a mouthful, it's because it was. Busy night. Ian will be running around. We'll have a live game. All that coming up tonight. Thanks for watching SportsZone All Access. We'll see you on Wednesday.
See ya.